The youth ministers here at OCC, and a couple weeks ago, Daryl put out there that he'd like to have Chad here talk about some things that are going on in our community as it relates to drugs. And so I want to introduce Chad tonight, but first I want to start off with prayer. So I'm just going to pray. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for a place like this. It's a beacon of hope. We thank you for information that will hopefully help our community with this struggle. Lord, I just pray that especially the young people in this town know that people care about them and we're here for them. It's in Christ's name we pray. Amen. Hey, I want to introduce Chad. I just met you a little while ago.
Yeah,
but
it was nice though.
Yeah. Chad is 1998.
98, correct.
Grad from Orrville, right here in town, and from the Career Center as well. He went on to the University of Akron to get a criminal justice degree and interned with the Summit County Examiner's Office. In 2001, he became, I couldn't say this part because I'm a Michigan fan. Sorry.
Oh, yeah, there's that.
In 2001, he became a police officer at the Ohio State University in Worcester. He had achieved the level of sergeant in 2013. In 2015, Chad became the death investigator for Wayne County Coroner's Office, and I think that's kind of why you've seen a lot of what you're gonna cover tonight. He's as an on-call basis and weekends and holidays. He's received several distinguished awards and merit awards over the years. This one I thought was really cool. He's a diver for the Worcester Fire Department Water Rescue Team. And so tonight he's going to talk to us about some of the overdoses that has gone in our community. Let's give him a warm welcome. Thanks, Chad.
Thank you, John. Thank you all for having me and braving the weather and some of the other issues to come out. I really appreciate that. It's great to have a live audience. I've given this presentation at the university a couple of times, both in front of students, and now we're doing it on Zoom, and it's really difficult when I don't have that kind of feedback from faces. So even a masked face is better than a blank screen. So my credentials are up there. I'm not going to go over those. I use those more in the classroom just because those students are there. They're paying for that education. So they deserve to know who's standing in front of them. So I do give them kind of my pedigree there. I am not here as a representative of the university. I need to make that clear. I am not here as Sergeant Chad Stanton as an emissary. I am here as Chad Stanton as a member of this community. So some of the things I talk about aren't always fact. Some of them are opinion. I can't get away from that. What that means is I do the research, I read the articles, I talk to the people, I see the victims, I hear the stories of the survivors. I take those in, I interpret them, and I give them back out. So while I will have facts and figures and numbers up here that are accurate, not everything I say people will agree with. And I understand that. And that makes sense. Because some of you, and some of you out there that are watching, have lived these experiences different than I have. You have friends and family who've experienced this, and you've experienced loss. We all have. So I will get into some of that as I go on, but that's just kind of my warning, kind of fill out the crowd and let you know that there are agents out there for this county. There are police officers and deputies that are dealing with this every day that I don't. They may be more the expert. However, I'm up here today and you get to learn from me. So if we could go on to the next slide, please. So the basis of this problem we're seeing, I'm going to take this back to the kind of the root. What is an opiate? What you're seeing up there is the crystalline structure of heroin. Some of the drugs I will talk about are all based off of this structure. You can see the red, the blue, the gray. We move one of those just one little part over, one little part this way. We take something out. What do we have? Well, we either have a drug that works really, really well, or we have a drug that kills you. But they're all derived from this structure. So we talk about things like hydrocodone, oxycodone, Vicodin, morphine, all things you've heard of. All things some of you may have taken. Maybe go to the dentist, have a tooth done, surgery, something like that, and those drugs are things that are prescribed. But they're all coming from this. This is what comes out of the poppy. So if we can go to the next. So a little bit of that history and origin. What are we seeing today's heroin? It's a little bit different than what we may have seen generations ago. Your heroines that we saw, let's say, the more the rock star style drug, we're thinking like back 60s, 70s, Keith Richards type heroin. Most of that you saw come out of Afghanistan. That's that kind of powdery brown substance. Sometimes it's bleached white because it's stepped on. That's a statement or a term some people don't understand. It's a very simple marketing. If I have a pound of something that works really, really well, I will mix it with another pound of something that's benign. And what do I get? 2 pounds of something that works kind of well. So that's stepping. They will step on heroin and have, since it's been brought into the country, with everything from baby laxatives to rat poison. As long as it's a powdery substance that can mix well, that's what you get. We'll talk again a little bit more about what that means, but this is the heroin that you saw them cooking down over needles, or over spoons with a lighter, things like that, burning off those impurities. What we're talking about today, though, is something completely different, and it's black tar heroin. 100% pure, very, very cheap, does not need to be cooked down, can be ingested, smoked, injected, lots of different methods. We'll talk about where that comes from. Price differences, too. That pure South American or Afghani heroin, we're talking hundreds of dollars at some times. Mexican black tar heroin, $7 to $8 a hit. Again, that'll make more sense as I go on. But I just want to kind of give an idea of what we're talking about. They are sort of 2 different drugs right now. If we can go to the next, please. So heroin itself was not invented or not broken down to a mappable structure until around 1874. And that's where it's named, that's where it comes from. We talk about a couple of different names throughout the program, but this is nothing new. 5,000 years ago, the Sumerians realized that this poppy plant had special powers, had the ability to make people sleep, had the ability to take away pain and make them feel euphoric. Now, this is raw poppy we're talking about. It was not what we're seeing again here, but this is the genesis of humans using opiates. So we go there. And I always throw this slide up. There's just, as we go back, that one was labeled about opium, what they used to call opium dens, things of that nature. It's not something new, so we can go to the next, please. Thank you. I love this quote. People talk now that it's almost like a surprise. I didn't know this would be deadly. Well, Pliny the Elder, 23 AD, knew it was deadly. This is not a surprise. This is nothing new. You take too much and you get eternal sleep. Pretty simple. They knew it then. We need to realize it more now. So that historical use, we're talking about getting into the just pre-Civil War area. So the morphine is isolated out of the poppy. So now we have something we can work with, something we can synthesize, something we can build off of. It's named after the Greek god of sleep, Morpheus, which again, we're going back to what Pliny said, are we not? The eternal rest if you use too much. Again, we knew this stuff was dangerous, but it was worth the risk. It worked really, really well. So we jump up to the Civil War. Morphine sees widespread usage. And a lot of times we think of like your movies, the Vietnam movie where the guys are using heroin, the World War II films where you see them, they're putting the little morphine hits into the guy who's got the bullets in him, to kill the pain. We think about that being more modern, but it's not. We're talking Civil War. We're talking a year before this town was founded. 1864-ish, and we're already creating morphine addicts. We're already creating heroin addicts, even then. There were young men that came back from that war to this very town that we're living in with opiate addictions. It was also seen as a miracle cure. This comes up a lot in the class. I've had some students, the professor that I've worked with kind of gets into this a little bit with them prior to. Has anyone ever heard of a Laudanum party? These were very popular during that time frame. And it was a very fun thing to do, much like book or wine clubs, as people call them now. It was very similar. Ladies would get together, have tea that they would lace with laudanum, and laudanum is nothing more than liquid opium. And it gave them that euphoric feeling, and they enjoyed it. They loved it. It was great. It was sold as a diarrhea treatment, and who often has diarrhea? Children, babies. So what were they giving these newborns, these toddlers at that time? Opium. It worked great, and it had another side effect that was wonderful too. They stopped crying. So again, it was a drug that was used quite readily because it worked quite well. We can go to the next. Just one of the ads that I found from that 1901 time frame that was very popular. Again, you could have walked into any of the stores in this town and picked up a bottle of heroin without a prescription and probably without much warning from the pharmacist. So definitely something has been around. And I like to throw this all out there because it kind of plants the seed to how we've gotten to where we've gotten. Go again. So again, it works. And it works so well that your body gives into it, which is a weird thought, isn't it? Your body gives into it. So your body naturally produces serotonin, dopamine, and things like that as a response to stimuli. You eat something you really, really like. You have a really good ice cream, chocolate, and let's be honest with you, sex. All of those things cause your body to create this dopamine and serotonin release, and it makes you feel euphoric. It makes you feel happy, and so does heroin. As you begin to use, as you begin to replace those natural releases with the synthetic chemical, you take something that comes as more or less an addiction to a compulsion. You no longer feel that you can survive without it. You no longer feel that your life is worth living without that feeling of levity. And again, we have to go into that because how can people use this when they know it could kill them? When they know it's deadly? It's no secret. 5,000 years ago, we knew it could kill you. 5 days ago, we knew this, but people still use. So it's worth building in and getting an idea that's that trigger, that reward system. For some of us, that'd be like if I came to you and said you could never have chocolate again. You'd get that sick feeling in your stomach. You wouldn't know what to do. You'd say, I don't want that. And that's what an addict, that's what they feel. You can go to the next, please. It's not always to get high. And I think we forget that a lot when we talk to these people, when we see them and we judge them maybe from the place that we're standing. And we go, all you want to do is get high. Sometimes when you get to the point like this with opiates, actually the majority of the time, it's to get normal. It's to get out of that hole and just feel like you can function for the day. And then we get into some polyabuse issues when you start to try to balance that out so you can get your euphoric feeling from the heroin, but you need energy from Adderall or methamphetamine or cocaine and things like that. But those who are addicted, the brain will simply stop producing because it's easy. I don't need to anymore. The brain says, we're done. This is great. Somebody else is taking over. So again, it's not just about getting high. It's about feeling like your life is worth living. A couple of things that come up with that, as again, like I said, the trying to feel normal and all that, but we get into also withdrawal symptoms. This is what makes heroin and opiates so hard to beat, is that withdrawal symptom is so strong, you will do anything to avoid it. It's something that until you've been there, I can't imagine it, or I can only imagine it. I've never lived it, but when I talk to some of these recovering addicts, when I talk to some of these people who are fighting every day not to use, that's how they feel. They feel like there's nothing in this world that will ever replace that. They will always live trying to catch that high. Anyone ever heard the term chasing the dragon? Okay, what that was in reference to was the old school opium dens. They would be smoking the pipes and the smoke would waffle off the pipe into these den areas where they would be, and it was always trying to catch that smoke again, that first time you got high, that first time you experienced the opium, you were always chasing after that again. That's where the term chasing the dragon comes from. They'll do anything to get it back, and it creates a perfect kind of situation for overdose. Because when they get it back, the body changes its chemistry. The body will start producing a little bit on their own, maybe not enough, things like that. It gets very, very confused. So they lose the idea of where that tolerance is. And it creates an environment very, very ripe for overdose. We can go to the next. So why are we seeing it again? Why is this, all of a sudden, I'm talking about something that we were using 5,000 years ago, 500 years ago, 200 years ago, and it kind of died off. Didn't hear a lot about it. Well, there were some changes. The drugs, we were having a little different, we had the war on drugs. It was easy to intercept international drugs, I suppose it was, those coming up from South America. It kind of fell out of fashion to a degree. And again, you had to cook down these drugs. This heroin had to be cooked down. It was very difficult to get a hold of in some instances. You had to go to certain places to get it that perhaps weren't exactly the most safe. And you had to go to people who were dealers. It's as simple as that. But we started looking into this perfect storm of things, and it starts to get broke down in the late 80s, early 90s. They come in and they make pain the fifth vital sign. And it took me a while to really wrap my head around what that meant. And we all know what vital signs are, right? We've all watched the movie. Some of you come from medical backgrounds. We have things like blood pressure, heart rate, your pulse, things of that nature. Those are vital signs. Those are things that we can look at and they're concrete and the doctor can read on a meter and go, okay, this is where we are. But what they changed was they wanted to make pain the fifth vital sign. So what's pain? Well, pain is subjective. I can't measure your pain. There's no scale for me to project. You had to tell me what that is as the doctor. The smiley faces. Everybody knows the smiley faces, right? Okay, that's the holdover from that. Where are we at today? You're coming in, and they ask you every time, do they not? You're coming in for something completely different. You're not in pain. You got a fungal infection. I don't know. And they're like, where are you? Okay, you've got some muscle damage, some tendon damage. We could probably get in there and do some surgery. You need rehab, lose a couple pounds, maybe change your diet, whatever the case may be. And they send you out the door. And it still hurts. And you go, well, this didn't work. I'm not happy. I don't have time for rehab. I don't want to lose weight. And I'm certainly not going to give up cheeseburgers. But my knee still hurts. So you're home, you're stewing on this. You're like, why does this happen? And what comes in the mail? A survey. And these were really popular back in the early 90s. Maybe you've heard referred to as Prescaney surveys, things like that. And that's how hospitals and physicians receive bonuses. The happier their patients, the more money they get. So what we start to see at the same time is there's a company, one of them called Purdue Frederick. And they come in and they go, hey, you've got unhappy patients, you got people who are in pain, and we have a cure. We have this pill. It's derived, it's a synthetic opiate, and you give it to your patients. It's non addictive, it doesn't have any bad side effects, and it takes away pain. Here's all this data to prove it. Doctors say, hey, why not? This makes sense. Start giving it to the patients. Patients come in and go, hey, doc, my knee hurts. And they go, you can do all these things or you can take this pill. And what do people do? They take the pill. Who wouldn't? They go home, holy cow, it's like a new knee. Give me that survey. I'm going to fill out all the little stars. And they do. And what happens? Things start to go back up. Hospitals get their bonuses. Doctors get their yachts. Whatever the case may be, things start to look better. Because what are we doing? We're treating pain. And we're handing this stuff out like chiclets. It's not long before it starts to catch up. So now we're creeping into that late 90s, early 2000s, and we start to see things like narcotic registration and opiate registration. So all of a sudden now these doctors are finding out this isn't such a good idea. Yeah, your knee may not hurt, but we've created an opiate addict. So they start to wean people down. They start to look for alternatives. Not all doctors, though. So what do we get after that? We get pop-up pain clinics. Now, the younger generations won't remember these as much, but I think some of this else we will remember. Remember, it used to be, it'd be like hair care supply, tire sales, pain clinic. You know, they were in strip malls, they were everywhere. Portsmouth, Ohio, right here in the good old Buckeye State. Ground zero for pill mills. It actually had the largest pill mill per person numbers in the United States at one time. And there was a physician there, he's actually, I believe, in prison now, who was training other doctors how to run pill mills. So what do we need these pill mills for? Well, the normal physicians or regular physicians were cutting people off, and they were looking for alternatives. So they would go to these pain clinics. They would be seen in seconds. Literally, they had one where it was a physician out of Florida. They would fly him up to the clinic. He would stay there for a day, maybe two, and write thousands of prescriptions for opiates. To the point where literally, if they averaged the numbers, I believe it was 23 seconds per patient. He would take his check and he'd go back to Florida for the next several months. And that's how this worked. But they were great if you were an addict. They were a constant supply, it was easy to get, and it was right there. So again, the government, watching out for us to that degree, goes, okay, we fixed one problem, it's the time to fix the next. So they start regulating these pain clinics. They come in and they start cutting down these supplies. But that doesn't cure the addict. That doesn't help the person who's wanting this pill, this high, this pain relief, all these things. They're still there. They're left hanging. And there is no, there's no help on the way. There's no plan for what to do for them. We've shut down these pill mills, but there was somebody who had a plan. And if you go to the next slide, please. They were from Galicia, Mexico. Now, the Galicia boys were established in kind of the southwest region, New Mexico, Southern California, places like that. They had been selling heroin in that area for decades. Mexican black tar heroin. This area of Mexico that they come from is a very, very poor mountain area of Mexico. They're a proud people, but they don't have the work. And this was very, very easy work. There was no shortage of young men in Galicia that were willing to come to the United States and either mule the heroin or sell it. They had a reputation for being nonviolent, for being very customer service oriented, which is a nice new term on an old thing. But one of the things they were good about was flying under the radar. They'd supplied this heroin to the Southwest for, like I said, for decades because they could blend in. They didn't drive flashy cars. They didn't spend their money extravagantly. But let's face it, they looked different than populations outside of that area. Until we started to see a shift with our economy, and we started to see more Latin American workers further north. One of those areas, Portsmouth, Ohio. I'm going to keep dinging Portsmouth here because it comes up a lot, but it was pretty much what we consider that whole Rust Belt area. Had a population of Latin American day workers, things like that. So these Galicia boys literally set up a pipeline from the south straight into Ohio because they saw there was a customer base and they saw an area where they could blend in. So they did exactly what they had done decades previous. The same method, the nonviolence, the customer service, and they were smart. They would literally, I'm not kidding you, stand around the corner from these pain clinics. So you have addicts that are walking out of there, getting cut off, getting tapered down, and it wasn't any good. They didn't want this. And they turn around, and there's someone waiting for them that has a constant, ready supply of a drug that's cheaper and gives them the same high. It was perfect. I'm not kidding. It was literally the trench coat guy, like, what do you want? And we will make it happen. They would deliver it to your door on Christmas Day. And if you bought 6, you got the 7th free. So now we have this class of addicts, potential addicts, that no longer have to go to the high crime areas to get their drugs, don't have to travel. Let's be honest, I went to high school here. This is a small town. I would not have known where to buy heroin when I was 16 years old, when I was 17 years old, when I was 36 years old, I wouldn't have known where to get it had it not been for my job. But I didn't have to worry about that anymore. There was a nice young man that was going to bring it in a non-flashy car right to my door. So we're feeding into this model. This little note here. Again, in the class, we talk a little bit more. I kind of get into more specifics on this rural area, but they would always, when the police would stop them, they'd find a lot of times they'd have bottles of water in the car, and no drugs, and they couldn't figure out why. And it was very simple, was they carried very small amounts in little balloons. And they were instructed to always have water because if they got stopped, they were to swallow the heroin. So that's where that little note comes from. If we can go to the next. Just to give you an idea of how much cheaper these things are. So a hit of heroin, $7 to $10. Street Oxycontin between $10 and $20 a pill. So you can imagine, that savings there kind of adds up over time. And just for a frame of reference, marijuana is roughly $20 a gram, and that fluctuates. So again, you have these people that they start out and they think, okay, this isn't so bad. I'm using pills. I get these from my doctor. I need them. I'm not a heroin user. And they would go to these dealers. We can go to the next slide if you would, please. They would go to these dealers, and it's a perfect model for the dealer. I had one young lady that explained it very, very well, how she fell from using Oxycontin that she was prescribed from her doctor after a car accident to shooting heroin that eventually killed her. And you're thinking, how did you get the story that it killed her? Well, she was saved, thankfully. But it did stop her heart at one time. She got cut off, meaning her doctor would no longer give her the pills she needed. Why? She aged out. She fell off her parents' health insurance. 23 years old. So no longer could get her pills. She's hurting. She needs them. She hears about somebody that can get them for her. She pays this person a visit. Absolutely. Yeah, this is what you need. You need those pills? Bam, there you go. You got your pills. And she leaves, and she's good to go. The next time she needs more, though, she shows up. Hey, those pills you got me. Yeah, we can get those. It's going to take a couple hours, though. Supply's low. Hey, I got this heroin if you want. This is her words, not mine, but I love the way she put it. She goes, I don't use heroin. I'm not trash. So she waits a few extra minutes, hours, gets her pills, goes on her way. As this progresses, these dealers, they know. They don't want to sell you pills. They want to sell you this black tar heroin. It's cheap, it's plentiful, and they want you buying it. So the next time, now instead of a couple of hours, it's going to be a day before she can get those pills. This continues until she shows up at that door, and she's 2, 3, 4 days out, dope sick, and in need of what she still sees and feels as medication. And they go, we got this heroin. And she goes, I'm not trash, but give me the heroin. And that's how it starts. It's as simple as that, getting cut off from your parents' insurance. This wasn't somebody that wanted to be a rock star life, shoot heroin because they wanted to know what it was like to get high. This is somebody that simply lost their insurance. A lot of the people I've talked to who are surviving, who are fighting this, you know what their number one complaint was that got them onto the opiate? Was tooth pain. How simple is that? You bite into a popcorn kernel, you got a tooth that goes bad. You walk into any ER in this country with a broken leg, and you are likely to walk out with your leg in a cast. Okay, you are well on your way to healing. You go into an ER with tooth pain, and you will walk out with drugs. because there are no dentists in ERs. So, again, that's just something I've picked up in talking to people and finding out these stories. It's dental pain. This is one of the biggest causes of opiate addiction. This photograph is from East Liverpool, Ohio. Again, we're back down in that Rust Belt. I bring this up, and I use this photo in the class too, because a lot of times I have students from the area. And it may not be easy to see there, but if we go to the next slide, please. Those are two people experiencing a near overdose high with their child in the car. These drugs take over your life. You will get high anywhere and anytime you can. When I get new students in, I'm very fortunate I get a chance to talk to parents. And I usually have the students leave, I get the parents in the room, and now these are parents of prospective college students, okay? These are 18, 19-year-old kids ready to step out into the world, but some of them are 3 months out of high school. I tell them, you need to look for things, you need to watch things. I go, you are gonna see the problem before we are. It's those visits to Grandma and Grandpa's medicine cabinet. It's those times where, they call you and they say, hey, Dad, you know that my script for Adderall that I take? Yeah. Hey, I accidentally knocked it in the sink. Can I get an early refill, or can you give me some of the ones you guys have at home that you've been holding on to? And most of us as parents go, yeah, we get it, no problem. And then it happens again. Hey, Dad, hey, my script, you're never gonna believe this. My roommate, they stole my meds. Listen, it's never gonna happen again. The police aren't involved or anything, but I need that early refill. What are we finding out is sometimes the cause of this? It's because they're selling them to get the drugs that they need. They will lie, they will cheat, they will steal. They will get high with their kids in the car. I don't think any of this is quite shocking to this group, because we've been seeing this more and more and more. But sometimes to some of these kids that I talk to at the schools, it is quite shocking. I know, I don't think the cameras go this way, but is anyone in here, I used to ask this the other way around, I'd ask, has anyone in here experienced someone who's overdosed? And every hand went up. So is there anyone in here that's not experienced a friend or a family member that's overdosed? And for those of you can't see, there's no hands going up, because we all know someone. It's that prolific. We can go to the next one, please. So the kind of the big three, and what I want to lead into a little bit, what we're seeing now. So I've kind of given you the history of it, kind of giving you an idea. Again, I'm not the expert. Someone could come in and argue that there was a lot more other avenues to how these drugs got here. This is just one story that I've told you. But heroin, fentanyl, and carfentanil. Most likely you've heard of the first two. Carfentanil is just another formula, basically, another way of creating that crystalline structure that makes it extremely potent. So I use this example when I do the class is, if this much heroin can kill you, this much heroin, or fentanyl can kill you, the dot on the I in carfentanil can kill you. It's just a little bit more potent. We go to the next. So what are we seeing currently? Again, I'm not the guy on the street. I won't try to pretend that I'm this active street cop. I'm out there slaying drugs every day, taking people to jail. It's not me, okay? I work on a college campus. There are officers and deputies and agents out there doing that every day. But I ask. I get the answers, I get the opinions, and I get the information from these people. So we are seeing an influx of fentanyl in both fake prescriptions and just as fentanyl. We have gotten to the point now where we have a class of addict who has no problem using just regular fentanyl because they think they can handle it. And maybe they have. They know their tolerances. What they've taken in the past was mixed correctly, was cut correctly. So we're talking about an inert powder, an inert stamped pill that has a dusting of fentanyl on it. And if done right, maybe they're right. Maybe they do live. Maybe they just get high. But if it's done wrong, I know we can all relate to this. How many people have made cookies, right? making a batch of chocolate chip cookies. I don't think there's a soul in this country that hasn't made a batch of chocolate chip cookies. You're mixing that batch. You dump in the chocolate chips. You put them on the tray and you bake it. Okay, what happens sometimes though? You get one cookie and there's only 2 chocolate chips in it. You get another cookie, there's 11 chocolate chips in it. Hey, it's a bonus, right? Worst case, you get a bite without chocolate. Same thing here. If they don't mix this right, and if they don't get this to where they need it, it's not just 11 chips, it's death. But again, there's no shortage of people willing to give it a try. We have actually started to see an uptick in cocaine usage because, this is great, it's the safer alternative. There for a while it was. Your opiates were killing people, cocaine wasn't. Again, cocaine, powder-like substance, imported usually, can be cut. They take and they cut it down, like I'd mentioned before, that stepping of it. The more you cut it, the less potent it is, the less people get high, they don't want your product. But if you splice in a little fentanyl in there, boy, that goes a long way in making a batch of cookies. So they started putting it in cocaine because it was a drug people wanted. It was a drug they could make money off of. What my understanding is, what we saw here recently and what very closely almost cost some young men their lives here in this town were prescription pills that were meant to be either Xanax or Percocets that were actually fentanyl. This happens every day. People abuse scripts. They think they're buying a Percocet. They think they're going to buy a fentanyl, or I'm sorry, a Xanny, to mix with some weed. They're going to go about their day. They're not opiate users. They're not doing anything dangerous. They're just going to play with their high a little bit, and they unwilling or unknowingly buy a bar of fentanyl, and they take it, and it damn near kills them. On the next slide, these are some of the numbers. So in 2015, we were looking at around 50,000 deaths. In 2017, 72,000. It's a big jump, right? We started to see some numbers go down, though. I want to look at our Wayne County numbers here. So we had 1835, down to 12. And hopefully you can read the notation there. It says, thanks, Narcan. Yes, thank you, Narcan. If you're not familiar, Narcan is a drug that reverses the effects of opiate overdose. So those little receptors we talked about, those pleasure receptors, the dopamine, the serotonin, things like that, okay? In that same category of your brain, in that same kind of realm, are the parts of your body that tell you to do things important, like breathing. That's why it was such a great cough suppressant, because what do opiates do? They suppress your body's ability to breathe. Narcan, thankfully, as those opiate receptors are out there, you give them the Narcan, it wipes them off. And you breathe again. It's the simplest way I can put it. Now, I'm sure there's somebody with a whole lot more medical background out there going, he's got that way wrong. But I'm doing the best I can. But I think I'm pretty close. The bad thing with fentanyl is it takes a lot of Narcan to knock those fentanyl receptors off your brain. Almost to the point where I've heard stories, again, I don't want to throw out numbers that aren't right, but I'm confident I've got them pretty close, as officers, we carry around between 2 and 4 milligrams of Narcan. I've seen it work with 2, and you're going to see it work in this presentation with 2. I've heard of fentanyl users coming in who have had between 40 and 50 milligrams and were still lost. So Narcan is not perfect, but it makes a big difference. And remember that opinion thing I mentioned in the beginning? I have a very strong opinion, and it's different than a lot of other people. I hear it go both ways. I'm a firm believer that Narcan's a great thing. I believe that these people who experience these overdoses deserve another chance at life, and I believe the Narcan should be used. I hear a lot of people that don't agree with that, and they say, let them die. It's their choice. Let them go. Less addicts, the better. I can't get behind that. That's simply my opinion. until it's someone you know and someone you love, or maybe even your own child. That's a whole lot of tough talk until they're the one laying there. And I equate it to this is, yes, I get drug use can be a choice. We also carry AEDs, automatic external defibrillators. If you were having a heart attack because you had a poor diet and lack of exercise, I don't stand over you and judge. I don't go, that was your choice to live that life. I'm not going to give you this AED. I equate it the same way with the narcan. It's not my decision to choose. I'm going to give every tool I can for you to survive. So either way, narcan is out there. You're going to see narcan work here shortly in a video. But it did bring those numbers down. If we go to the next one. And things were looking better. We went down to 70,000 towards the end of 2019. But then Corona happened, and now things are a little askew. We don't really know where those numbers are. I actually heard a very interesting short talk. Her name is Dr. Labor. She works at 180. She had a piece out the other day. I was really interesting to hear. She goes, we need to remember we still have an epidemic operating inside of this pandemic. And we got a lot of people who are in their homes, who are isolated, who are having mental health issues, and everything else who are still using opiates. And we're going to see that resurgence, I think, when this is all over. But again, those are opinions. I can't prove that. But I can show you some more numbers. I can show you that, we still have 3 more months. And if you go to the next slide, please. Our numbers are up. So maybe some of the things I'm saying are opinion, but these are facts. So in Wayne County, we had 20 deaths in 2019 from opiate overdose. We're at 21 right now. We got 3 pending. 3 of those deaths came from Orrville. If it wasn't for the hard work of our first responders, that number would be 6, because there's 3 young men who are standing up and breathing that shouldn't be, had it not been for those people that saved them. So those numbers are real. We can go to the next. I use this story a lot because it relates more to my students that I speak to, but I think it can relate to a lot of people both here and that are watching. I won't use names. However, this is a case I handled. It was a very hot July night. I get a phone call. It says we have a body to pick up at the McDonald's on Burbank Road. So that's out in front of Walmart. So I get over there. It's around midnight. I don't know what I expected. I don't know why, but I thought, well, if I have the place closed, there won't be anybody around. We'll go in and we'll do our investigation. No. McDonald's was open. They were still serving food. I went in, there was a young man dead in the bathroom. Dead to the point he still had the needle with him. He had overdosed on an opiate. Everything that young man was, someone's son, possibly someone's brother or sister, and what I later learned, he was someone's father. Everything he was, every hope and dream that his parents had for him, grandparents, family, everything ended in a McDonald's bathroom. I completed my investigation. I put him in the body bag. I put him on the gurney, and I had to wheel his body between cars that were in the drive-thru still waiting on their chicken nuggets. Because that's where we've come. That's the point we are at, to where we don't even stop serving French fries to get a body out of a restaurant. I feel every one of those cases I go on. I really do. Especially the opiate ones, because I understand from talking to people how hard this is. If we go to the next slide. I'm putting this up as a trigger warning. I use this a lot. That's a term we use a lot in higher education, these trigger warnings. What you're about to see is a narcan rescue. I use this video. These two gentlemen, the officers that you see, are friends of mine. I know them very well. They work for me. You're going to see this is local. This isn't on the news. This isn't another state. This isn't people, in areas that, big cities. This is Worcester. So if you can go ahead and play the video, I might talk a little over it, but I want you guys to hear the sounds. For those of you who don't know, this is body cam footage. It was released publicly. Body cams don't record sound for the first 30 seconds, so you're not going to hear much until then. All my officers know is that there's a woman doing CPR in front of the gas station, and they're rolling. This is actually not on our campus. This is next door, but we carry Narcan, we carry AEDs, and we're always there to help. So again, they're just going to roll in. So there's that sound picking up.
Unlock it so we can get the Narcan out in case we need it.
Good move.
Inside? Alright. Go and secure the car.
Seems like forever, doesn't it? You know who it really seemed like forever to, and you're going to see in a second, is this poor woman doing CPR. Talked to her later on. She said it felt like days for someone to get there.
Okay.
Oh my God, I'm so glad I freaking came over.
Gloves on, Ben?
Yes,
sir. Alright.
Are you guys good? Do I need to stay here to?
Just sit tight here, okay?
That young
You're
lady
doing
is not
CPR, Ben.
unconscious. That
Yeah.
young lady is not in a coma. That young lady is dead. The noise you're hearing is what they call agonal breathing. That is just merely air being pushed across her vocal
Check for
cords.
pulse, bud.
That was not a breath.
Okay, got a little breathing going on? Alright.
He's assembling our Narcan. Uses an atomizer that sprays it into the nostril.
Okay, if you got a pulse, just go ahead and hold up.
Still gasping.
Yeah, just a little bit.
Do you know who she is, man?
Okay. Keep her in that position.
Those are breaths.
Just get her on a recovery position there, Ben.
She was actually on her
Oh,
side.
actually, squad's here. Let them step in. I got one dose in, guys.
That young woman was a young mother, actually. Had a child at home. She used an opiate in someone's vehicle, and they kicked her out, dead, next to the trash cans at a gas station like she was garbage, without a second thought. There was a fire station 100 yards away. You could see it from those garbage cans, and they left her on that sidewalk to die. That is how powerful this addiction is. That is how scary it can be. I've watched that video more times than I care to, and it still makes me sick to my stomach every time. But it also, I feel it in my heart because she lived, because of what those people did. I don't know the rest of her story. I wish I did. I do know that when I checked on it for the report, they said she was discharged in the morning. So she walked out of the ER several hours later and lived. You know, I don't know how successful these Scared Straight programs really were. You know, sadly enough, we know the DARE programs weren't all that great. Scared Straight may have some ideas. I didn't show that to anybody in here to embarrass them, to embarrass her, or to try to scare someone straight. Now, if it did those things, if it scared someone enough that they don't decide to use heroin, great. But to me, this not only helps explain to those of us who've never done it just how powerful it can be and how hard it is in families. The next slide is a blank. I usually leave that open. I leave it blank because this is where I fill in my story. And my personal loss to opiates. I had a cousin who we were very close as children, and she was a couple years older, so we drifted apart. But we lived in the same town, and there's people probably watching and are in this room that knew her. And we always knew there had been a car accident when she was young, and there had been some experimentation, and we always knew that she used pills. And as a family, we thought, well, these are pills. They're from a doctor. How dangerous could they be? And they were, at that time, pills from a doctor. And they were regulated. And we saw that dependence grow, but we didn't know what to do. We saw it and we thought it was okay. We didn't like it, but we were willing to live with it because we loved them. We didn't love the addiction, we loved them. And it got worse as she got older. She had some other surgeries and things like that where she had some real pain she was treating with these drugs. But just like everyone else, what happens? You run out of money and you run out of insurance, so you start to look for alternative means to get your drugs. Later in her life, she moved out of state. She started living and working with people who had access to other drugs. One of those drugs that she purchased was Loratab. Loratab, again, another opiate. She was gone for about 10 years. In that time, she did have a child. I hadn't met that child yet. I didn't think anything of it. I thought, this is how people live. This is life. And some idle Tuesday afternoon, I got a phone call. A phone call that she was dead. She died on her 41st birthday from an opiate overdose. She died with her son, and they were alone. And he was with her body, trying to wake her up. She didn't get high because she wanted to. She got high because she felt she had to. She didn't want to leave her child alone in this world with her body because she wanted to have fun. She got high because it was the only way to escape the pain. So these are different stories. So I told you in the beginning, I don't always know what these people are thinking. I don't always know what the life of an addict is like, but I know what it's like to lose an addict from your life. And it's rough, and it's hard. And there's a lot to it. And it's not the only family member I've lost. And again, I don't want to throw names out. Those of you that know me know I had a family member that would have graduated with me in our class, and he's now gone. He left 2 beautiful children on this earth without him because these opiates were stronger than his will to live. Will you go to the next slide, please? Thank you. So that is my story. That is my personal part of this that I tell every single class. And it never changes how much it hurts every time I tell it. So what is the solution? Well, there's one solution that I believe is not the one we want. And you're probably looking at the screen right now going, what the hell does Ebola have to do with heroin? I would probably use COVID now as my example, but I built this PowerPoint a couple years ago, but it's still a great idea here, is why does Ebola not wipe out all of Africa? It's highly contagious, it has no cure. As a hemorrhagic fever, it kills very painfully, very horrifically. And in theory, it should. So why does it not become a pandemic? Well, how does a virus work? It goes from host to host to host. We have the same style of epidemic with opiates. It goes from host to host to host. So the really only way a epidemic ends is it runs out of hosts. Ebola simply runs out of hosts because Africa is huge and most of the infected die before they can geographically spread to the next village, to the next city. That's why it's so scary when they see it in bigger cities that have transit systems. But for the most part, it happens in these small villages. The hosts die before they can spread it. And it's the same way with heroin. That's the natural solution. is we run out of hosts. And that was part of why I think our numbers started to go down, where we started losing people and not replacing them. I don't want it to be this. I don't think it has to be this. I don't think this organic, natural cure is going to be the solution. I think there are ways we can do that. If we go to the next slide, please. It's not just one thing. There is no silver bullet. There can't be. Why? Because of what I've said already. Look at how many solutions or how many ways people have become addicts. It's a multifaceted problem. I've told you at least 4 different ways that that's happened. It's spray and pray time. Empty the mag. It's not a silver bullet. It's all the bullets. It's education and intervention and treatment, not just one of those little bubbles. Daryl wanted me here so that we can get some things out in the open, and that's what I'm doing. I don't know which is the best cure. I don't know which rehab is the best. I don't know which approach is the best. I don't know if it's, hitting them when they're in 3rd grade, or if it's better to start at them when they're in 5th grade or high school. We don't know, but let's do it all. What's it going to hurt? We have nothing to lose by educating, by trying to be that early intervention, and then helping those who are addicted. We can go to the last slide, please. I put up the warning signs, but I don't think at this point there's any of us who haven't gone through a high school health class that don't already know what you start to see. The anxiety, the psychosis. They start using more and more. They start giving up activities. They start giving away possessions, stealing, lying. These are nothing new. These are all things, especially if it's someone you love, you overlook. That you just don't want to see, because you want to see them and not their actions. But they're real. So I'd be remiss if I didn't at least put them up there, but I think we already all know them. So we can, I think, go one more. Nope. There we go. All right. One of the local sources that we have here is 180 here in Wayne County. We also have the counseling center. And then a myriad of private insurance-based treatment options. Worcester Hospital has created a new system also. A lot of these rely on the addict taking some self-responsibility, and it's really hard. They're always going to need support, people. So, if we can go to the last one. All right, so I've given you what I know. I've given you some stories of people I've worked with, but both the coroner's office, the police department, people I've talked to, and people I've lost in my life. And this is where we start asking some questions. I already admit I don't know all the answers, but I will do the best I can to either point you to it, or at the very least, answer it if I have the information. So, John, I think you have the insight on some online questions too.
If anyone's here in the audience, if you'd like to ask a question, we'll take yours first, and Daryl will text me in questions that are online. So is there any questions? First, I want to say, hey man, thanks for sharing the information, but also thanks for sharing your story, dude. I mean, like, it's powerful. It's powerful. So, hey, Daryl, go ahead and text me in any questions if you got any. Any questions in the audience?
All right.
Hey, I want to. I thought you said with your personal story you saw your family member go down a path and you didn't know what to do.
No.
That was that really resonated with me. What would you have wanted to do looking back on it now?
So it's kind of a twofold thing. One is, I think, bringing it to light. What's done in the dark needs to be brought into the light. You have to admit that there's the problem. You have to make them realize that you see it. It's really, really easy to enable somebody simply by doing nothing. We call them enablers. We think they work actively to help the person continue to be an addict, and that's not always the case. Sometimes enabling is just simply doing nothing. Calling them out, putting them on notice, and saying, hey, look, you have a problem, and we have to do something. And it's freaking hard. And it's awkward. And it's, you know, you fumble and you drop the ball, but you got to pick it back up and you got to keep going with it. I failed at it. I feel I have. It's really difficult. So there are professionals. Get them in front of people. Interventions work. Now, does the treatment after the intervention always work? You know, that's a crapshoot. Depends on the person. But interventions at least do that. Literature, information, being careful with your supply. And most students that I've talked to that do have drug problems, the medicine cabinet was their first dealer. That's very common. Midway offers drug returns. They actually did one last weekend. It was wildly successful. I think with what had happened kind of spurred some of that. If you do have medications, prescriptions, things like that, narcotics, opiates, please get those disposed of properly. Keeping them around is like the worst thing you can do. I know it's easy to do, you know, you get them and you just want to have a few extra in case your tooth starts hurting again or whatever that case is, but often enough those are stolen and either used or resold, so safe disposal. Yes, sir?
So if you had the opportunity to go back in time and speak to an addict immediately before they take their first drug, and you had 30 seconds, what is the one thing you would tell that person?
Tylenol. I'm sorry, there are safe alternatives.
Just a second, Ted. I'm going to repeat that for online. Somebody in the audience asked, what would you tell somebody 30 seconds before they took their first hit?
And again, I say Tylenol or pain management outside of narcotics or opiates. You know, doctors are great people. I'm not disparaging them, but I do lay a lot of the blame at their feet. And it may not be, you know, a fault of their own. A lot of them were very misled by studies and things like that that came from some of these larger pharmaceutical companies. And you know, you see it now. The way they do pain management now is completely different. Doctors and hospitals have done, you know, a 180 as far as opiate and narcotic usage. So, you know, I'd love to just shake them too and go, you have no idea what you're facing. It's hard. I guess that's something that, you know, you gotta have faith that you would have the right words at the right time. I just didn't. And, you know, that's something we live with. So.
Hey, I got a question from Tracy Cook online. It says, where are kids getting the drugs currently?
Okay. So that model I talked about, with the Ecclesia, that marketing, it's an old model. It's no good anymore. It's just straight dealers. The precursors or the ingredients from the fentanyl are coming in from China. They go shipped down through Canada, up through Mexico, it's into the West Coast, where they're built into either fentanyl in its own standalone, or our pill presses are becoming more popular, so we're seeing kind of garage labs and things like that working their way east, is what I was told. So they're literally stamping pills in garages and mixing them with fentanyl. So they're going to their standard dealers. You'll see it online. Things like, it used to be Backpage and Craigslist, things like that are now replaced with Instagram, Snapchat, are just rife with dealers. They just throw it out there. It's amazing. You know, the traffic is just huge. So they're just hitting up their regular dealer, and their dealer will find them. If they want it, it doesn't take long. Yes, sir.
Do you know how many dealers are in the area? I mean, how do you
You know,
quantify that?
when I talked to Daryl too, we talked about having maybe some of the Medway agents come in and speak also. They would have a better idea of that. I don't want to talk out of school as far as like the kind of that boots on the ground effort. I don't really know. You know, what I've seen in my 20 years of policing is you can arrest this many, and there's always this many coming to take their place. You know, there's no shortage of people wanting to make money easily selling drugs. So it's not always a matter of cleaning house, because it's constant. You know, so, but they do what they can. The courts do what they can. You know, but it's a big boogeyman. So I don't really put the blame on one or the other. It's a big fight. So, but again, they could attest to those numbers more than I could. I don't want to speak out of school on that.
I know when we talked, I'm not an expert, man, when I see kids that drop out of things and then start hanging out with older kids, usually there's not much good that can come from that.
Yeah,
And I'm not picking on anybody, but when I see a kid change friend group and all of a sudden it's older kids, I'd be cautious.
And you're going to see it as a youth pastor. Again, this is when I talk to the parents, I said, you're going to see this before I am. You know, officers can walk by dorm rooms and hear beer cans getting cracked open. They can hear giggling. They can do all those things and investigate. But we can't know your students that they're crushing snorting a pill in their bathroom. You know, those are things that as a parent, as a youth pastor, as a mentor, if you're doing something like that, working, coaching, things like that, that you're going to see likely before the parents are. Have that open dialogue. Everybody's afraid of things like FERPA and HIPAA and privacy laws and things like that, but unless you're a medical facility, you're not really bound by any of those things. So don't let it scare you. If you are someone who works with youth, be open, keep that channel open, talk to the parents. I get that whole confidentiality. You don't want to, lose that line of communication with the youth, by more or less telling their secrets, but sometimes it may save their life too. So it's a hard balance. So not only do I thank everybody out there who does things like coach and mentor, because it's twofold. It's a difficult battle, keeping their confidence and then making sure they don't get hurt. So.
Okay. Going once, going twice. Hey, one person I like to thank is Daryl, who really pushed this forward and wants to. I'm supposed to look at my phone? Oh, there's another question.
There's a question there. Excuse me.
My bad. Oh. Okay, Chad, do you facilitate presentations geared toward children, teen, students? You got presentations that we could...
I could try. I'm not opposed to it, but no, my presentations, normally what I gear towards is the college age. I always kind of joke, I've been babysitting 18-year-old children for 20 years. They may be old enough, but some of them aren't quite, there as far as adults. So, but I'm willing to do anything I can. So
we've got a lot of kids around here. We'd probably have to have you back on a Wednesday, or
I'd be willing to do whatever it takes.
Yeah, I know Daryl. Like I said, Daryl pushed this, and the church was able to open our doors up, and I know that Daryl wants to bring in some medical personnel, some law enforcement personnel, some treatment personnel, and some parents and kids and people who have beat this, and some people who have lost this, and just keep raising the issue. Some of the kids that we've referred to, they've come here every Wednesday night, or some on Sunday night, some on Sunday mornings. We hate to see it, and that's where I'm at. I don't want to hear any more about it because I want to beat it. So,
it's hard.
Hey, if we could give Chad a round of applause, we really appreciate you. Appreciate the people in the sound booth and the people working to put it online, for sure. I'm sure Chad's willing to stay and talk if needed. And if you guys need anything, I think one thing that we all need is a little hope. And whether it's this church or any church, prayer could not hurt this situation at all. So thanks for coming, and have a good night. Be safe. Thank you.